Hello, class. Today we are going to take a look at Hildergard Peplau and her theory of interpersonal relations. The reason I chose this theory is because this theory serves as a foundation of the nurse-patient relationship. It describes how the way we relate to our patients can affect their overall health and the effectiveness of their treatment. As a behavioral health nurse, I chose this theory because it resonates with my approach to patient care and aligns with my professional values. It is extremely important in my job that I establish a therapeutic relationship and communication with my patients. Many of them are there for several days and are mentally vulnerable. Some may have paranoia or distrust. This means that the way I relate to them directly affects their cooperativeness and success. Since the theory was originally focused on psychiatric nursing, I think it is especially pertinent to me. After all, Peplau is known as the mother of psychiatric nursing. However, it certainly has ties and relevance in all types of nursing. Current nursing practice still emphasizes therapeutic communication, active listening, and collaborative goal setting, all directly tied to Peplau's work. As nurses, we move through clear phases with our patients, which provides structure for care and helps define our nursing identity and establishes nursing as a unique discipline, not just a medical extension. We will go through these phases later as we learn more about this theory. First, let's just spend a moment talking about Hildergard Peplau and her career. She was born in 1909 in Pennsylvania to parents of German descent. Because nursing was one of the few careers open to women at the time, and after witnessing the devastation of the flu epidemic, she chose to become a nurse. She graduated from the Pottstown, Pennsylvania School of Nursing in 1931. Then she earned a bachelor's degree in interpersonal psychology in 1943, before serving on the Army Corps of Nurses during World War II. During World War II, she was exposed to some of the leading figures of British and American psychology. Once exposed to mental health nursing, she developed a desire to help change the current mental health system and was directly involved in passing the National Mental Health Act of 1946. She then got her master's in psychiatric nursing from Columbia University in New York in 1947. As a teacher, she developed the first postbaccalaureate program in psychiatric nursing and wrote extensively, advocating that nurses receive higher education to provide truly therapeutic care, rather than simple caretaking and task-oriented care common in mental hospitals at the time. In 1952, she published Interpersonal Relations in Nursing. She also became certified in psychoanalysis by the William Alanson White Institute of New York City in 1954. She was the only nurse who served the American Nurses Association as executive director and later as president. She saw major developments and changes in the nursing profession during her career. She died at age 89 in 1999. In 1952, Hildergard Peplau published her theory of interpersonal relations. This theory emphasizes the nurse-client relation rather than task-oriented work, as had been the focus of previous psychiatric nursing. It treats the nurse-patient relationship as a partnership, with the assumption that the nurse and patient can interact. It emphasizes the use of therapeutic communication to foster respect and growth from both parties. This idea of collaboration was somewhat groundbreaking, as previously, nurses were viewed as the authority that the patient was expected to passively submit to. Peplau thought differently. There are four main components of her theory. The first is person. This means that the patient is an individual with social as well as physical needs. It also emphasizes that this patient is growing, changing, able to adapt, and, as previously said, should be an active participant in their treatment. The second component is environment. This means that there are external factors that play a part in the patient's health and interpersonal relationship with the nurse. Also, she noted that the environment isn't static. It is also changing. She emphasized that part of the nurse's role is to help the patient navigate and adapt to the environment through therapeutic relationships, and to be sensitive to the patient's culture. The third component is health. wasn't simply talking about physical health. In her theory, she emphasizes health as the patient's ability to grow, change, and develop in an interpersonal context. The fourth component is nurse. This describes the role the nurse has in the nurse-patient interpersonal dynamic. The role of the nurse is to treat the patient with dignity, to guide the patient, to collaborate with them, and facilitate coping skills. It also emphasizes the nurse's need to have the skills and expertise to be able to realize the help that is needed and provided. We will elaborate more on the nurse's role in another slide. Next, we'll look at the 4 phases of the interpersonal relationship according to Peplau. The first one is the orientation phase. This is where the nurse identifies the problems and the type of services needed. The nurse answers the patient's questions. I see it as similar to our admission process. The first thing I ask them is why they have come to us for help, what's going on, and what kind of help they are hoping to get from us. Then comes the identification phase. The nurse and patient are now working together. During this phase, the patient makes their thoughts and feelings known and begins to feel improvement and feels like they have the strength and resources to manage the problem. I see this in my practice when a patient that expressed a high amount of hopelessness begins expressing hope instead, feeling like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The next phase is exploitation. This is where the patient begins to be able to make use of the resources and services. They may still struggle with independence at times, but the nurse is there to aid them in being an integral part of managing their environment and treatment. This is like when a patient on my floor begins taking a more active part in their treatment, coming to ask for medications on their own, and begins actively engaging in discharge planning. The next phase is resolution. This is when the patient becomes fully independent and no longer needs services. This is where the interpersonal relationship between the nurse and patient ends. This is the phase in which a patient is discharged from my unit. We have spent the patient's stay trying to give them all the tools they will need to continue moving forward in health independently. In Peplau's theory, the nurse has some specific and vital roles in the relationship with the patient. The first of these roles is stranger. When the nurse and the patient first meet, the nurse's role is to treat the patient with the same courtesy and respect that she would give to any random person she may encounter. When I first walk into the admission room, I introduce myself, welcome the patient, and inquire about their preferred name. The next role of the nurse is to act as a resource person. In this role, the nurse begins answering the patient's questions and offering explanations of the treatment. As our initial meeting goes on, it's important that I explain what to expect and take the time to address any concerns and questions. The patient now understands that they can come to me to have their needs addressed. This does go beyond the admission room into the patient's continued treatment. The next role is to be a teacher for the patient. As they adjust to the unit, I help educate them on their conditions, medications, and skills to manage their mental health. Education consists both of instructional, which is a simple conveyance of information the patient needs, and experiential, which is taking what the patient experiences and what they already know to modify the information and methods. The next role is a counseling role. The nurse spends time with the patient, examining the patient's life situation and guiding them on how to make necessary changes in order to grow. This is an important part of my experience as a psychiatric nurse, to say the least. Our patients need advice that is both practical and encouraging. Acting as the patient's surrogate, the nurse can act as a replacement for someone else in the patient's life, or the patient may transfer past relationships and experiences onto the nurse. If this happens, the nurse should make sure to use it in a therapeutic way. The nurse's role is to always actively advocate for their patient while helping the patient gain independence for their treatment. When a patient has a need at a time the psychiatrist is not in-house, I must take the time to connect with the doctor and work with the doctor to come up with a solution. This could be as simple as advising the doctor that the patient is nauseous and needs an antiemetic ordered, or a more complex conversation about what is currently working or not working for the patient and how we can better make the patient's needs. The final role is that of a leader. This is where the nurse guides the patient to further independence in working toward and meeting the treatment goals. Through interpersonal relationship is a partnership and the patient's voice is important, they still need some guidance in how to accomplish the goals that we have set together. First, why do we analyze nursing theories? Because analyzing them helps us break down complex and abstract theories so we can get a grasp of their key concepts. We also have to examine how relevant theories are. Do they fit in with our particular practice? We also want to know if the theory is practical. What are the strengths and limitations of the theory? This is important as we develop the science of nursing. I chose Chin and Kramer's framework to analyze Peplau's theory because it works well to find the strengths and weaknesses of the theory and how to apply it to my nursing practice. First, Chin and Kramer look at clarity. Are the concepts clear and consistent? For Peplau, the concepts she gives us, like the interpersonal aspects and phases of the nurse-patient relationship, are clearly described. However, the roles are a little more vague and possibly are open to interpretation. Then Chin and Kramer look at simplicity. Is Peplau's theory easy to understand while also being useful? Here, Peplau scores somewhere in the middle. It is what you might call moderately complex. There is structure to the roles and phases Peplau describes, yet it is still not too abstract. Then we'll look at how broadly the theory can be applied. It was developed for psychiatric nursing, but it is pretty easily applicable to many types of nursing, possibly needing some modifications in certain circumstances. We also look at accessibility. Is the theory able to be observed, studied, and measured? And to this, I would say that Peplau's theory is fairly accessible. Nurse-patient interactions, their use of therapeutic communication, and roles can all be studied. Some of the concepts can be a bit more subjective, though, like when we look at the ideas of mutual respect and growth. Finally, we look at importance. Does Peplau's theory help nursing overall as a science and a profession? I believe so, because by looking more at the nurse-patient relationship, Peplau changed the course of nursing from task-oriented to relationship-based. And that is still very much emphasized and used today. Let's summarize the strengths and weaknesses of Peplau's interpersonal relations theory. This theory has some great strengths. This theory helps nurses understand the clear phases that are involved in the nurse-patient relationship. This theory can be used among a wide range of nursing specialties, fields, and settings. Its ideas about therapeutic communication and therapeutic nurse-patient relationship changed nursing in ways that are still relevant and used today. But there are some limitations to the theory as well. Some of the concepts are vague, such as the roles and growth, which are hard to measure. In emphasizing the relationship aspect of nursing, some could argue that it didn't put as much focus on health promotion, maintenance, and community resource access. Also, the theory cannot be used when a patient does not feel a need, such as a patient that is comatose or withdrawn. In summary, Peplau revolutionized nursing as an art and practice when she suggested that nursing would be better served by emphasizing partnership, respect, and growth between the nurse and the patient. The theory is broken down into 4 components: person, environment, nurse, and health. The theory follows 4 phases during the time the nurse and patient spend together: orientation, identification, exploitation, and resolution. In her theory, the nurse serves 5 important roles in the relationship: stranger, resource person, teacher, leader, surrogate, and counselor. Each role is important in fostering the growth of the patient. According to Chin and Kramer, the theory of interpersonal relationship displays clarity, simplicity, generality, accessibility, and relevance. This makes it overall a strong theory, but not a perfect one.